WTF is 3D, and how do I start flying upside down? For most people, when they hear 3D, they think of this. Or those weird ASMR videos with 3D audio.
I'm gonna have my wonder brush.
20 million views? 1.4 million subscribers?
Just me? Okay. In the hobby world, people hear the term 3D and they think of but what I'm doing is more like which means the machine is able to fly in almost any orientation with the ability to apply thrust in both positive and negative directions. Not just in one direction that a drone typically produces thrust with. You can learn to fly 3D in a simulator like Liftoff FPV drone racing. Do you get confused flying 3D and switching back to 2D? Never. Well, okay, it's more like learning a language, and once you become proficient in speaking it, you can easily switch back and forth. If you don't use either for a while, skills can become rusty, and after flying 3D for several batteries, it takes me a warm-up pack to get back into flying 2D, and vice versa. What about having the camera on a servo? No. No.
Why?
I mean, you could, but you'd end up not being able to easily tell what the craft's orientation is, and make flying 3D a bit trickier. Plus, the mechanism would easily be damaged in a crash. If anything, I'd want a servo mechanism to choose between 0 and 45-degree tilt, depending on the location that I'm flying and the style of flight that I want to do. What camera tilt do you use for 3D? 10 degrees, though I've used as much as 50. Both have a different style of flying. 0 to 10 degrees I coined True 3D, as inspired and championed by Liberimo. While at 50 degrees, you can end up with being able to rewind tricks. I call this 4D, and if you do it right, it looks like you can literally manipulate time, and it's pretty cool. What frame do you fly for 3D? The Flying Bear 01 is a dying breed designed by Ken Liu of California Quads. The biggest thing though to keep in mind with a 3D frame is that you really want to match your center of thrust and your center of gravity. The center of thrust is where the machine produces thrust, which is the propellers in the center of those props. And the center of gravity is where all of the machine's weight has the center point and where it balances out. That point is where you want your center of thrust and center of gravity to match. When those two things match, you have a well-balanced machine for flying 3D. Now, you can have a machine that technically has a balanced setup where it has a GoPro up top and the battery on the bottom. What ends up happening though typically is that you end up having a pendulum-like effect, and that when you slow the motors down in a 3D transition, you end up like having a judder just because you're shifting so much weight around at the poles of the machine. So keeping the weight centralized and having a top/mid-mount battery is really the way to go for 3D. I like the Flying Bear 01, the Excalibur, Hovership, Zulu, Armiton's Rooster, and Chameleon. There's a lot of frames on the market that I love, and hopefully I'll have my own 3D specifically designed frame here soon enough that will combine the best of everything that I love in this industry. What motor and electronic speed controller can do 3D? There's a lot of hardware that'll do 3D. For ESC hardware, One-Shot 125 and onward tends to support 3D well. One-Shot is an analog signal along with multi-shot and requires configuring your neutral, 3D high, and 3D low point in the Betaflight configurator. This is not needed for KISS, while D-Shot is a digital signal and requires less setup. Another thing to keep in mind with ESCs is the type of ESC. 32-bit is really where it's at. On top of that, you really want a metal FET if you can get it. The Airbot Wraith Titan ESCs have a metal FET option that allows them to do 80 amps. On top of that, there are BL Heli 32, which is a 32-bit ESC and performs a lot better than BL Heli S and BL Heli that preceded it. Another thing to keep in mind is KISS is 32-bit, which again performs very well for 3D and is still an option even going back to the V1 ESCs. Motor-wise, a taller and skinnier motor will give you better performance over a pancake motor. The taller stator gives you more torque, and your motor will be able to start and stop the propeller faster. There's also an interesting effect. The 2207 here is a pancake motor. It weighs the same as the 2010, which is what I call a tall statored motor. And both of these motors have the equal amount of stator space. But interestingly enough, there's less centrifugal force on the 2010 because of the smaller stator. But on top of that, the taller stator actually gives us 25% more stator magnets, meaning that there's more torque and more effect on the end of the bell housing, giving us even greater increased efficiency and torque. This is a really good design. The 2207 is also a great design. They have something that I consider a difference in efficiency. The 2010 is very efficient in trying to spin up and down a propeller, while the 2207 is more efficient trying to keep a propeller at a single speed. Now, thrust tests have shown the 2010 produces 5 less amps per motor than the 2207 on a machine. Both of these are Zoe motors. Both of them are great motors, but only one of them was designed specifically for 3D. And both of them will work great. That's the one thing you have to keep in mind. The 25% more stator is literally that, about 25, I would say about 35% faster spin-up times. It is a substantial difference, and you do notice it up in the air, but it's not one that I think is enough to hinder most people from being able to have a decent experience right now with modern hardware. On the firmware side of things, Butterfly and Betaflight both support it, along with KISS. On top of all of that, the new IQ Motion Control speed modules work in 3D mode on any standard flight controller, even on Racelight. Burp. Old or new, there's a hardware path for you to 3D. Where do I get 3D props? APC has some amazing 3D propellers that have recently come out. The 5x4, RH, and LH variations, linked below. Master Airscrew is also working on a new 3D tri-blade prop based off my suggestions. GemFan has the original dual blade 3D prop, and you can find the 5030 tries based off of this on AliExpress. They're some of the best in my humble opinion and are essentially Racecraft Unicorn Spurn 3D props.
Don't ask.
I have some limited edition DR1 colors. They also had some prototype 3D props in 5 and 6 inch. One of the biggest issues with the 3D prop is the resonant frequency. At certain throttles, it can act as a tuning fork and cause the prop to flutter with certain frame setups. Several prop manufacturers had to deal with this unique issue in unique ways.
Nerd. You're a fucking nerd.
I could go on for hours about 3D prop dynamics and what I've learned over the years, but I will save you that for another video. And if you want to see that video, leave a comment down below because I want to know if you're willing to watch a 20-minute video of me just talking about 3D props. From stuff on the market to stuff that was never released. From the nitty-gritty details, everything. I want to know if you want to watch that video. Have you flown X-Class drone racing in 3D? Not yet! Curtis Youngblood Jr. has already beat me to the punch with a 1200mm collective pitch 3D drone by several years. With fixed pitch setups, we're just starting to get to the point where hardware in the market can begin to do 3D mode with these larger props and motors. I already have a hard enough time trying to keep from burning down what I already have. Can you 3D a whoop? Sorta? The biggest issues with micro 3D setups, especially brush setups, are they require an extra FET on the board to reverse the voltage. So a lot of brush setups physically can't do it. Though with turtle mode can come 3D functionality since they effectively need the same FET setup. So I'm hoping there will be some next generation brushed boards that support it. Along with that, brush motors have a brush that will wear down faster while upside down. I've had good luck with the 2-inch setups like the Zappi 120Z edition with the top mount battery. And yeah, I think micro 3D is on the cusp of becoming reality. How do you configure a drone for 3D? Depending on your setup, configuration will be different. This is arguably the hardest part of 3D next to actually flying it. Check out my 5-minute video on setting up KISS and my 20-minute video on setting it up on Betaflight. They cover most of what you need to know. Now, I didn't cover one-shot calibration, just use these settings. And I really didn't cover the trick for getting D-Shot working on KISS with 3D mode. First, you have to calibrate everything on one shot like you see in the video, and then you have to enable D-Shot after you configure everything with one shot. It's a little bit of a hassle, and I'm not 100% sure why you can't configure it with D-Shot enabled, but that's just the way it is. The biggest thing you have to keep in mind, safety. Always test the props off. I know that if you configure these machines improperly and you go to arm them and Betaflight isn't being kind, there is a risk of you arming and going full throttle negative or full throttle positive, causing your machine to basically become an angry flying lawnmower. So make sure you test everything before you ever put a prop on. For example, if you're in Betaflight and you set up the machine with one shot and everything is working correctly, and then you're like, great, I'm going to enable D-Shot because D-Shot is awesome. And then you enable D-Shot, but then you don't test it with the props off, you just go out to fly. Well, you put the drone down, you go to enable the props, everything spins up, everything looks great initially, and then you go to take off. And all of a sudden the machine because for whatever reason D-Shot switches the direction of your motors when you enable it from going from one shot. I don't know why, but it's a bug, and it's a bug that affects 3D mode. So you have to be careful, make sure you configure these things. They're really, it's still, I wouldn't say 3D is experimental. Okay, it's experimental, but it's getting better, and it's getting a lot easier to set up. And with the IQ motion control motors, I honestly believe we'll have Gen 1 of true 3D support in flying with drones. So, I hope you found this video helpful. I've been Zoe. Please leave a link, comment, message, share this video on the internets, because if you want 3D mode to become more popular, more people have to know about it and have to learn about what it's all about. I know there's a lot of information that can be really confusing when you're trying to get into it and figure everything out. You know, a lot of people have a lot of ideas what it is and what it isn't. And so hopefully this video was helpful and sending you on the right path. Anyways, I love your face, and I've been Zoe, and until next time, keep it inverted.